Look! Look, the dynamic duo!
Hey guys, welcome to the Dynamic Duo. I'm Franz.
I'm Kevin. Welcome to the new Batcave and Avengers Tower, everybody.
Hey Kevin, we've got lots to talk about today. Actually, we've got two major things we want to talk about today. And again, guys, we'll break up the show into two different sections, so join us for the other piece. But two major announcements. I want you to make the Kevin Feige announcement, what he said last night, the night before.
Yeah.
And of course, the latest Spider-Man movie trailer dropped. And guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. We need your help. We need to grow this channel. So hit the click the like button, subscribe, share, do what you need to do to help us boost up. Even though, Kevin, I think some of my comments today may make people unsubscribe, but what's your thought? What do you want to start with?
Well, before we move any further, I want to thank everybody who's already liked and subscribed us and picked up a level of interest on the Dynamic Duo channel. It means a lot because the number has grown, and all we can ask is that you all keep supporting us, keep being there, because we will too. Now, with that said, let's get started. Part of the announcement that my partner is talking about is that 2 days ago, it was announced that the Ironheart character that was born out of Iron Man and what have you will replace Tony Stark entirely in the MCU, and the character is going to be introduced in Black Panther 2. Now, from what I understand, no one has been cast in the role yet, but this is indefinite, and according to all reports, there will be no return for Robert Downey Jr. unless it's a specific flashback or something that deals with the past. The character that Robert Downey Jr. played basically is gone.
Well, for me, this is a very complicated subject. And it's a subject that elicits a lot of emotions out of me because it's a multi-layered subject. So my initial reaction, my genuine reaction is I don't like this at all. I don't like it at all. Now, again, I have to always be careful to distinguish between my dislike of this and other people's dislikes of this, because I do think there's a major difference. Why do I dislike it? I dislike it first and foremost. Okay, well, first of all, let's recognize something. Let's recognize something. Robert Downey Jr. cannot come back as Iron Man. He could not come back as Iron Man. Technically, he could, but it would be a mistake because he's getting older. Time is moving on. Eventually, it would have to happen. And so that is happening now after so many years, almost 10 years, or 5 years from now. It's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is at some point in the future, and now into the future, Robert Downey Jr. would have to give up the role of Iron Man because Iron Man is simply not that old. Tony Stark is simply not that old. Props to him. He brought the character to life. He's the only actor that I would give credit of saying that in many ways, his Iron Man has become more iconic and more solidified than even the comic book Tony Stark. It's a fascinating thing. But props to him, but he couldn't go on forever. So eventually, guys, we would have to move on to another actor. Now, moving on to Ironheart, and is a mistake in my view because of a couple of reasons. The first reason is that it's a failed concept. And, you know, they tried it in the comic book. The comic books are the testing ground for this material. And the closer you stick to the source material, and I've said this a million times, the more successful you will be. But obviously, the closer you stick to the successful material rather than the failed material. And the Ironheart character completely failed as a comic book character. It wasn't received well, it wasn't accepted, it wasn't liked. So to bring that into the MCU is a stupid and silly mistake, in my opinion. The other thing is, right now, we're in a very volatile state. People are very fragmented. And there are the AIWs, the anti-inclusivity warriors, who are hating just for the sake of hating, who are hating anything that includes diversity, that includes inclusion, and they're coming hard. And I said that this elicits emotions out of me. I have to tell you, this pisses me off. And I'm going to talk about that also when we talk about Spider-Man, but it does piss me off. The fact of the matter is, there are bigots out there who are disguising their anger through character changes, but who are really only concerned about bigotry and don't want inclusion. And sorry, Kevin, and I'll make this as my opinion, not the show's opinion. And some people may dislike what I'm about to say, but I'm against that. You know, Kevin Feige making that move is a move that I personally applaud on his part. I applaud it. I think it's heroic. I think it's courageous. And I think it's important. I've said this on other shows before. There are times in our society where these radical moves have to be made to break the chain of what's come before. It happened with African Americans. It had to happen with women. And people complained then too. How dare you? How dare you make Star Trek kiss? The concept was just as horrifying to them as it is for them to see a buffed up She-Ra and He-Man. So those things have to happen in order for society to change for the better. So I applaud Mr. Feige's courage. I applaud that he didn't rest on his laurels. I applaud that he's taking a gamble and doing it for the sake of diversity. And let me say this, Jesus Christ, is that what you're against, diversity? You're against people being represented? The idea of a minority or of a woman or of a Black person or of an Asian being a hero bothers you that much? Because that's what it is. That's what's bothering you. You guys don't say a damn thing. You get all excited about the Spider-Man trailer, but the changes in Spider-Man, so I'm changing subjects, but I'm going to get back to it. The changes in Spider-Man are much more radical than what we've seen and some of the things that you guys can't fathom, you know. So the only thing that remains is bigotry, and that's shameful on you. Now, having said all that, having said that I applaud Kevin Feige, having said that I'm for diversity, I also say it's a mistake. It's a mistake because the character is a failed character. It's a mistake because changing a character into something that he or she is not is also a mistake. I love Iron Man. I love Tony Stark. I don't want somebody else to be Tony Stark any more than I would want somebody else to be Spider-Man or any other character that I like. So you're distancing me from the character that I love. So that's another layer of mistakes. And sadly, because of the bigots, because of the AIWs, it's a mistake because it gets to you, you're validating their point of view. It's one thing to do it with Captain America. I thought they handled it brilliantly with Captain America. And I was never a fan of the Falcon Captain America in the comic books. I didn't like that because I love my Captain America, as you can see. But the way the show handled it, given the realization that Chris Evans could no longer be Captain America, that switch made such perfect sense. And to me, it was handled brilliantly. But it's one thing to do it with Captain America. It's another thing to do it with Thor. And then now you're bringing Iron Man into the fray. And so what you're doing, even though it's a 10% situation, even though Superman, Batman, all these characters are still white males, the vast majority is still white males, you're validating the people's point of view of saying, oh, look, they're changing everybody into minorities. So for those reasons and more, including the fact that you're going to turn people against you, I don't like that decision and I'm against it. But at the same time, I applaud it but I'm against it.
Allow me, partner, to add to what you just said. I too am against it for a lot of the same reasons you just said. But with that said, people need to realize two major things that have not been announced yet. And if I'm wrong about what I'm about to say, then so be it. And again, as you just indicated, what I'm about to say is me. It's not you. It's not the dynamic duo. But this is what I believe they're trying to do, in the sense of they're setting up a platform for the all-female A-Force Avengers movie, and an extension and continuation of the A-Force comic book, which by itself is not a problem. I have nothing against the A-Force characters at all. I think it's a neat way to go. I think it's a great thing to do. Should it change up all of what we've come to know as the Avengers? No. No. The thing about this, and this is where Marvel and DC at times have gotten into a little bit of trouble, is, in my opinion, the continuity of who lives and who dies. They're getting carried away, in a manner of speaking, because Tony Stark is not dead in the comic books. He's only gone for the sake of the movies. And it's the same thing with a number of the other characters as well, meaning, Black Widow is not dead in the comic book. And pardon me for saying this as a spoiler for anybody that hasn't seen Black Widow, I'm sorry, but no, she's not dead in the comics either. And a lot of what they're doing, and this is along the same line of, like I said, in some cases, what DC is doing with certain things. They're getting carried away with the idea of movie and television versus what's in the pages of the comics. There needs to be a certain line of clarity and a certain line of
continuity.
Thank you. Word escaped me for a second. And they're beginning to monkey around with so much of the continuity that they're hurting the comics. It was said years ago that there was going to be an all-female Avengers movie. I have absolutely no problem with that. I'm actually looking forward to it. Whether people realize it or not, they tilted their hand and their hats to the A-Force coming when Avengers Endgame happened, because not to really get into this, but I have to say it, there was a split-second a scene in the movie where, when the ladies were going up or getting ready to go up against Thanos, and first of all, it was Captain Marvel that needed to get through the crowd and what have you, and Peter Parker ends up saying to her, "I don't know how you're going to get through all that," and the response from the group of ladies, and I believe it started with Scarlet Witch, if I remember correctly.
Hi, I'm Peter Parker.
Hey, Peter Parker. You got something for me?
I don't know how you're gonna get us through all that.
Don't worry.
She's got help.
get right down to it, it was a cool looking little scene, but they had the women do the big heroic pose, and everybody stood still for about 5 to 10 seconds. And everybody that follows the comics and knows the material knew that when they posed them that way within that setup, what was coming, because the audience blew up when all those women were together. And that's exactly what's coming. Do I think it needs to be done within the context of the second Black Panther? That may or may not be a problem for them. Because if I remember correctly, the young lady that becomes Ironheart is from New York. And what I believe they're going to end up doing, or at least that's what it seems like in the sense of telegraphing what they're doing, they're going to end up saying that the young lady is part of the Wakandan warriors. They're going to give her the tech. They're going to give her the advantage, and the material that Stark was responsible for that started Ironheart, it's not going to come from Stark, or at least a portion of it is not going to come from Stark. It's going to come from Wakanda, and that's going to be their bridge for doing it. Is that a problem? It's not what I would do with it. I would stick more to what the source material was, stick more to the original, and go from there. But this is what is coming down the pike.
Well, I've said, and you've gave me so much to think about as I was listening to you, and it kind of, believe it or not, changed my perspective a little bit. I said that it's a mistake because it's a failed concept, and I stick to that. It's a failed concept. It wasn't popular. The character wasn't. It didn't become established in the Marvel comics. Having said that, I also said that they handled the Captain America Falcon change very, very well. There is a way they can handle this change very, very well. And it's a simple way, actually. And I realized it as you were talking. It's a very simple way. Just don't make her Iron Man. Like, don't pretend that she's Iron Man. And if she's a young lady who's tech savvy and who's connected to Wakanda, and they could develop the technology, and she could make an armor the same way there's Iron Patriot and there's War Machine. There could just be another person in a suit of armor who happens to be female, and so that could be interesting in and of itself. And so if it's handled the right way, I have no problem with that character. As for A-Force, I don't like Endgame. I don't like that movie. I don't like that movie. And one of the reasons I don't like that movie is precisely what you pointed out. That scene to me was a failure. It was a failure because it takes from the moment. That whole past the basketball, the football scene, to me was cheesy, corny, and unacceptable. I saw it coming a mile away. And I know you may disagree, and that's perfectly fine. I'm telling you how I feel. I thought it was very cheap and very cheesy. You could tell that every hero is going to get their chance at the football, essentially, so that we can highlight it. We have the Black Panther moment, then we have Spider-Man, then we have this, and then to make it worse, we have the females, and then we'll show you that the females come together, and it's supposed to be a war scene. People are not doing that in a war scene. Can you imagine, watching Private Ryan and the characters taking a pose type of thing, or having some sort of agenda? I say this to say, the way you handle that presentation is very, very important. The way you handle an A-Force or an Ironheart is very, very important. While I don't side with those people, they make a point that if it's forced, then it doesn't feel right. It's not right. It isn't good. It is a mistake. I don't know that I get as riled up as they do, but doing an all-women Avengers team feels forced to me. Am I saying they couldn't do it in a way that's brilliant? I'm not saying that at all, because listen, Marvel has blown my mind. So who am I to say that? But the concept feels forced to me. The concept of Falcon and Captain America feels forced to me. They handle that right. The concept of Ironheart feels forced to me. I don't know. Hopefully they'll handle that right. A-Force, having an all-female team, I could only imagine how people are going to react, how much they're going to hate on it, how much they're going to want it to fail just because they're AIWs. So it feels forced to me. So in that sense, you're copying, again, a failed concepts from the comic books, a failed concepts, and you're bringing it to light. There are other ways, in my opinion, to do it. There are better ways to do it. You can highlight, successful concepts, bring that into the MCU. The way that I would approach it, Kevin, is this. The way that I would approach is this. And I thought this was what Kevin Feige was doing, and perhaps it still is what he's doing. This era of the Marvel Universe is coming to an end. The Tony Stark, Chris Evans, that group of guys are coming to an end. Chadwick Boseman coming to an end because some of them are not here, others are getting too old, and others are moving on. That era is moving on. I would let that era die. I'd let that era die and put it to rest in honor. I would start another era, an era that could capture our imagination just as brilliantly, just as powerfully. The era of Fantastic Four, the era of the X-Men, that era. And Spider-Man could actually bridge the gap between the two, because Spider-Man gets along just as well in the Avengers world as he would with Fantastic Four. So Spider-Man could bridge the gap. You start that era, you introduce us, you get us excited, you culminate it like an end game with a Galactus cometh, you know what I mean? And then at that point, you can restart the Avengers with a new actor playing Tony Stark, because 20 years will have passed and we will have moved on from that thing. That's the way I would handle it. In the meantime, I would also do what Kevin Feige is doing, which again, I absolutely applaud him for. I would do Shang-Chi. I would do She-Hulk. I would do characters that are diverse, that introduce other people, other cultures, not cultures, other ethnic groups to this audience, because we need to see that. We need to know it's not just us. It's not just what we think of as superheroes, that's a superhero. An Asian character can be a superhero, Marvel superhero, just as a woman could, just as a Black person could, and so on and so forth. So that's how I would handle it, to be honest with you. And we have to wait to see how it is handled.
Understood. And again, I couldn't agree more.
Well, guys, listen, I think some of you may agree or disagree. Dislike if you need to dislike. Certainly share your opinions. Let us know what you think. And we're going to move on and talk about the Spider-Man trailer that just dropped. So join us for that conversation.